conflict of the Ukraine-Russian war began to intensify on almost all front lines. As you know, the Donetsk region of Ukraine has been the scene of quite complex situations, especially in the past week. Now, with the focus of Ukrainian forces on the Luhansk region, the new address of conflict and warm contacts has shifted to front lines such as Kreminna and Svatove. Russia's expectations are to stop the Ukrainian forces acting in this region. However, this step aimed by the invading Russian troops will not be easy, as Ukraine focuses on the Luhansk region by easing its attacks in the cities of Bakhmut and Soledar a little more. Today, the armed forces of Ukraine gathered reserve forces, including a large amount of artillery, and began to conduct non-stop offensive attacks on the settlement of Novoselovskoye, located in the Svatovsky district. After the soldiers of Ukraine's Kraken battalion fought on the outskirts of Novoselovsky, the settlement literally became the front line of defense of the Russian armed forces in this part of the front. With the help of fire from artillery systems, MLRS, mortars, and heavy flamethrower systems TOS-1A Solntsepek, Russian troops are trying to stop the Ukrainian offensive in this area, trying to prevent the Ukrainian troops from gaining a foothold on the outskirts of Novoselovsky. It was also reported that the soldiers of the Kiev regime transferred manpower and armored vehicles to the Stelmakovka settlement, where they supported the advancing groups. Russian concentrations in this settlement are constantly being hit by Ukrainian artillery. Russian infantry forces, supported by armored vehicles, attacked in the direction of Makivka and Nevsky, and in a number of other areas the other day. The village of Novoselovskoye is located approximately in the middle of the road between Svatovo and Kupiansk. Although the village is small, it has great strategic importance and opens the way back to the city of Kupiansk, which was lost during the autumn offensive of the Ukrainian armed forces. The Russians, on the other hand, are constantly trying to take Novoselovskoye under their control in order to carry out an attack on Svatovo and Kreminna. So you see, one of the most important battles is currently taking place in Luhansk. The city of Kreminna is also one of the most active front lines of the Luhansk region. It is extremely important that the Ukrainians capture this city. If Kiev takes control of this city, they can solve all their problems in the east. First, when Ukrainian forces take Kreminna, they will be able to quickly encircle the Donetsk and Luhansk regions. After crushing the invading group between this line, the Ukrainian forces will be able to attack the Russian troops in the city of Soledar from behind. For this reason, the Russians will have to stop attacking and regroup. On top of that, most of the Russian troops will have to be sent back to stabilize the front line, because if the Ukrainians take Kreminna, they will continue to advance towards the east. Secondly, the capture of Kreminna will render the Russian defense shields installed in the north and south of Svatove unusable. The reason for this is that the Ukrainians, after taking Kreminna, will be able to go behind the Russian invaders and besiege the towns and cities here one by one. Third, with the Ukrainians moving further from Kreminna, Russia's most important supply lines will be cut off. These will include the highway passing through Svatove and connecting Russia and Lysychansk, and the railway connecting Russia to Luhansk. It will also create more opportunities for Ukraine to support its troops in Kharkiv in the east. Ukrainian authorities announced that they had launched an attack on the city in the past few weeks across Kreminna and Luhansk. Since then, there have been 2 periods of freezing cold in the Luhansk region, which lasted for about a few weeks. As Divine Justice YouTube channel, all of our findings are created by the work and analysis of our field warfare expert team and are based on data from the US, UK, Russia and Ukraine Ministry of Defense and independent war analysis and monitoring sources. Ukrainians were expected to increase their attack during this cold period. Many of you have noticed that this task of the Ukrainian forces turned out to be more difficult than expected. There are 2 reasons for this. First, the fierce fighting in Bakhmut and Soledar endangered the military reserves of the Ukrainian forces. Some Ukrainian troops were sent south of Luhansk to speed up the rotation process and reinforce weak spots. Secondly, because the Russians understood the value of Kreminna, they deployed a lot of troops in the city. The armies of Russia and Ukraine have about 100,000 soldiers in this 80-kilometer stretch of the front line on both sides, which includes Bakhmut and Kreminna. This corresponds to a large part of both armies. Despite all this and the slow progress, many changes took place in this region. Most recently, in Luhansk, we witnessed the Ukrainians kicking the Russians out of Dobrova and focusing on attacking from the jungle. We also know that although the Russians were expelled from Dobrova, the Ukrainians did not enter this settlement because it is under close surveillance by the Russians, and any move is likely to come under heavy artillery fire from the Ukrainian forces in Dobrova. Ukrainian artillery is also very active in this front line. The spokesperson of the Ukrainian General Staff constantly shares reports that Russian ammunition depots, fuel storage facilities, and headquarters are being destroyed around Kreminna. This anti-supply move of Ukrainian forces has begun to yield some results. Russian commanders fled Kreminna and moved to Rubizna. In addition, Russian tanks began to suffer from fuel and oil shortages in this region. This situation negatively affected the number of tanks that the Russians could send to the Luhansk front at once. Russian troops brought a lot of tanks here, as it was the responsibility of the 1st Guards Tank Regiment of the Luhansk region. At the same time, Russian forces released several videos showing the hangars where they hit tanks in Luhansk. Ukrainian intelligence and artillery are carrying out non-stop offensive operations to find and destroy these hangars. Apart from the artillery duels, fierce clashes continue in the forested areas in the interior of the Luhansk region. The Ukrainian side shared a lot of jungle combat videos, which showed violent clashes. The fact that both sides of the war are talking about the Ukraine progress here supports the accuracy of these shared videos. Ukrainian sources report that Ukrainian troops are very close to the southern front lines of Kreminna. A Ukrainian commander in the city of Kreminna, in Ukraine's Luhansk region, reported that his forces left the Russian positions south of Kreminna under non-stop artillery. A few days ago, a Russian source released a video of Russian forces working with Ukrainian forces near Kreminna. The Russian Ministry of Defense has released a report in which it confirmed that Ukrainian research and reconnaissance groups are operating in the southern directions of the Luhansk region. The British Ministry of Defense announced that Ukrainian forces are continuing to advance along the east coast of Kreminna. The Russians also resorted to some countermeasures against Ukrainian actions. First, according to the situation reports on the Ukrainian Luhansk front line, the Russian forces deployed their more experienced soldiers to Kreminna instead of the newly mobilized ones, because the Russians want to defend the settlement at all costs. These troops of Russia deployed to Kreminna include the mercenaries of the Wagner Group and the Russian airborne forces. Instead of just trying to defend their positions on the Kreminna line, the Russians are launching counterattacks, so both sides attack each other at the same time. This is a very costly tactic. The reason is that if the Russian forces only defended, they would not have suffered so much. But only in this way can they slow down the Ukrainian progress. In addition, the Russians are trying to weaken the Ukrainian defense in Luhansk and destroy all pontoon bridges in this area. But the invading troops have not had much success in this regard so far. Many sources report that the Ukrainians reached the east coast of Kreminna and Russian positions there. Ukrainian artillery units also play an important role for the Kreminna front line of the Luhansk region, because it seems almost impossible to see some very strong Russian fortifications in Luhansk without the artillery support of the Ukrainians. The departure of the Russian troops from Kreminna is considered a very good situation. If the Ukrainians show the same success in the eastern front line in Kreminna, the chances of winning this front will increase. We will see the effects of all these situations more clearly in the coming days. Please do not forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications in order to be informed about new videos. Thank you for watching us.